water main to your house is broken, you will not improve things by simply pumping more water through it. Yet that has been the U.S. government approach to fixing America's crippled credit system, pumping more money into corrupted pipes, the banks. Tonight in our fourth story in the countdown, with bank executives acting as though the government built them a water park, President Obama today went before the cameras with a plunger and a All right, enough with the metaphors. The specifics are yet to come, as Paul Krugman noted, in part because the global financial system is expected to get a massive overhaul when Obama meets with the leaders of 20 industrialized nations in April. But financial regulation is on the way. The president ordering up legislation that will tighten, streamline, and close gaps in a system that was systematically undone for the financial benefit of those at the top.
While free markets are the key to our progress, they do not give us free license to take whatever we can get. To rebuild trust in our markets, we must redouble our efforts to promote openness, transparency, and plain language throughout our financial system. We must demand strict accountability, starting at the top. Executives who violate the public trust must be held responsible.
Executives violating the public trust. Yesterday, Neil Barofsky, Obama's special inspector general for the $700 billion bank bailout, testified that banks receiving government help have been asked what they are doing with all that taxpayer money. Fewer than 5% even replied. 19 out of 20 banks taking taxpayer funds, telling taxpayers, go climb a rope. Some executives, like Morgan Stanley's James Gorman, telling financial advisors last week that if they stay on at the firm's joint brokerage venture with Citigroup, they will get retention awards, do not call them bonuses, that could total $3 billion. Morgan Stanley and Citi having helped themselves to $55 billion in taxpayer funds, even as other bailout recipients, namely Wells Fargo, decided last week not to offer awards to their brokers. Let's turn now to Newsweek senior editor Dan Gross, also author of Dumb Money, How Our Greatest Financial Minds Bankrupted the Nation. Dan, thanks again for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Right, Morgan Stanley and Citi say these retention awards, not bonuses, they don't go out until next January, so they won't be using TARP funds, they won't be using bailout money. Is that accurate, and should we give a rat's?
Well, look, this is one of they're going to have to settle on a story for this, because this notion that they took the TARP money and they put it in this pot over here, and all this stuff that's unpopular, like, sponsoring Shea Stadium or going on a junket or buying a jet or paying out bonuses, comes from some other pot over here, is absurd, because cash, as you've noted, is like water at these banks. It can slosh from one place to the other. So either they're going to have to say, look, we are using the TARP money in some way in this form, and there's a very good reason to do this for our business.
Is the cover story even valid, Dan? I mean, is the economic climate good enough in the economics business that there really is still mass migration of brokers from firm to firm?
Well, here's an example. As opposed to the compensation of CEOs and traders and investment bankers, where there isn't much of a market for their services, with brokers, it kind of does make sense, because these are functional businesses. This is, a stockbroker who's got 100 clients, and maybe together they have $50 million in assets, and he generates income for the firm because those people trade and pay management fees. That's still a good business, even though stocks are off 50%, because they're not going anywhere. And basically, a broker can decide after a year or after 2 years to take his group of people and the business that they generate and walk across the street. It happens all the time on Wall Street. So these retention awards is how they pay people, and the promise, it's like, you got to keep coming through the rest of the year, because next January you're going to get a lot of money. That's how they respond. So there is some rational business purpose for these retention, bonus, premium, gift perks.
Cash. The vice president today warned public officials that if they misuse stimulus funds, he will use his position to shame them. Historically, how does shame work as a big political motivator when weighed against billions of dollars?
Well, look, if we're going to have to rely upon shame to get people to do the right thing economically, I'm going to go buy some 50-pound sacks of rice and start growing some vegetables, because it's going to be a long, long night. Public officials seem to be uniquely immune to shame. Blagojevich, Burris, David Vitter. But more generally, our culture seems all about people not having any shame, whether it's Paris Hilton or many of our athletes who use steroids and then go on to play. So I think we better get some tools other than shame.
The Obama announcement today about re-regulating all of this. Does he get that Roosevelt rules were sort of systematically undone in the last 8 years, particularly to profit the rich, and he's just too bipartisan to say that? Or do we need to worry that he's going to leave some daylight between the cracks here, enough for new so-called shadow markets to emerge?
Well, this has been one of the puzzling things about Obama, because he's been very direct. He has this big mandate, and yet when it comes to kind of bringing down the hammer on Wall Street, he's hesitated, and so have many of the people surrounding him. And the only thing I can think of is that, you know, since 1981, which is basically the professional and adult lives of all the people around the Obama administration, Wall Street has gotten what it has wanted from Washington when it comes to regulation. So there's the sense that this is the operating system. We kind of take our orders from them, do what they say because it's good for the economy and it's worked out. That has clearly changed. So I think there will be clear regulation. Wall Street always managed to find a way to get around them. And they're going to kick and scream and yell about this. You know, in the 30s, they cried bloody murder about the SEC, the FDIC, all these things that actually turned out to be really great for them. I don't think it's going to be any different this time around.
And in fact, the way they called murder and cried murder was to call all those things elements of socialism. So nothing is new on this front. Dan Gross of Newsweek, great thanks as always, sir.
Thank you.